Hey guys, welcome to another Hog 4 study hall session. Today, Paul and I are going to go over plots. So, next up, we've got some other streams coming up, but this one's going to be all about plots and pixel mapping, which is going to be fun. Paul, do you have anything to add?
Well, hi everyone. It's good to see. What am I thinking? Good to be here again for another week. You know, I feel like we're starting a podcast here.
Basically are. We
Is this
have
is
our,
this is this what a podcast feels like?
yes, it is.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. This is basically what we're doing is starting a weekly podcast, a video cast of how to hog.
sweet.
Yeah, it'll be fun. So with that said, again, just excuse dogs barking, cats meowing, all that good stuff. You never know what's gonna happen, unfortunately. Um, so let's go ahead and get started. So, like I said, today we're gonna talk about plots. So for you guys that are kind of new and aren't completely familiar with plots themselves, um, plots are layouts that can contain programmable objects, so fixtures, mainly for fixtures is what they were intended for at the beginning when we released the feature, so that you could put fixtures in, select the fixtures, get some intensity and color feedback from them. But now, as time has progressed, we've improved the feature a bit, and you can pixel map on them, you can add in show objects, and then you can all like groups, lists, and then you can also add in shapes, so like pictures, that kind of stuff into it. So let's go ahead and talk about where plots are stored. So plots all live in the plot directory. If by now you have not realized there is a directory for everything, there is. So to get to the plot directory, there's one or two ways you can do this. One of the ways is to hold down pig, open, and fixture, and that's going to open your plot directory. Or you can just click and hold in here and get to plots that way through that menu. So this is where plots are stored, and I'm going to go ahead and just open a plot so we can see what one looks like first before we actually start adding fixtures in ourselves. So that I can kind of explain what all the buttons do at the top of a plot window. So to open a plot, you're going to hold down open and then tap on the plot inside the plot directory. So I'm going to explain this top of the plots window first. So this little dial here, if you push up, it's going to zoom in, and then you're going to push zoom out if you pull down. So these first three buttons are just going to control your zoom. Show all is going to show everything that you have inside the plot, and then show selected is only going to show you the fixtures that you have selected. So it's going to zoom in to show those fixtures specifically. I'm going to zoom back out for show all. Then you have the number sign, and that's going to be whether or not you show your fixture numbers inside the plot. Sometimes if you have a lot of fixtures, it makes a lot more sense to not show them, or if your icon's just too small. And then you have this little grid icon, and that's going to enable snap to grid. And this is going to snap the center of the object to the grid, to whatever your grid lines are set to. And that's what this number is here, your grid lines. Then we have, so these next four buttons here are our selection options. So you have the straight line, which is going to allow me to select fixtures in a straight line. A squiggly line, which allows me to click and drag over fixtures, and whatever fixtures I drag over, then then they will select at that point. And then you have your marquee tool, basically, so we can click and drag, and it's going to select in that range. And then you have your path tool. This one's a weird one. What it's going to do is as you draw, it's going to start selecting what fixtures are inside that blue part. And then if you overlap, it's going to deselect the overlapped fixtures. So it's a little bit interesting to get your selection that way. So those are your selection tools. And then your next buttons here, from the fixture to the shape icon, these are your edit locks. So think of these as like what object do you actually want to adjust inside the plot itself? So you have the fixture. So with nothing selected right now, we can't click and drag and adjust anything inside the plot. Now, if we were to select the fixture icon, we can then click and drag and place the fixtures into different places. Then you have the gang, which is going to be kind of like what holds your plot together. So it holds it into a shape if you needed to. So that's the gang tool. And then you have the pixel map icon, which is going to allow us to edit pixel maps. Your shape, your edit objects. So this is kind of to add in show objects, so groups, lists, palettes, that kind of deal. And then you have your shape icon, which lets us add in shapes, so circles, squares, and then even images into the plot itself. And then you can export your plot. So export display just exports what you see here inside the plot window, and as like a either JPEG or PNG. Oh, PNG it tells me if I hover over it. As a PNG file, and then export extents is going to export it as an SVG in case you need to get it in there and clean it up a little bit before you add it into like paperwork or something like that. Cool. And once you have an edit lock turned on, it's going to open your properties panes over here. So you can edit the grid, you can edit fixtures, stuff like that. Now that I kind of gave a little bit of a little bit of the lay of the land of the plot window, we're going to go ahead and make our own plot and add fixtures into it. So the best way to make a plot is to make sure your selections are clear. So you want to make sure that you have nothing, your programmer is completely empty. And then we're going to hit record and then tap on the plot that I want to be new inside the plot directory. And then once you hit record and you tap on it, we're going to open it to actually add fixtures here. So I'm going to go ahead and add those RGB LEDs. So that's fixtures 401 through 421. So to add fixtures, I have to make sure that I have my edit fixtures on and my gang on. And then I'm going to click in the properties pane, this fixture with a burst behind it. The fixture with the burst behind it is showing us that we are adding new fixtures. And when you click there, you get some other options when you're adding fixtures. You can either add in a straight line, a draw your own path kind of deal to add. So maybe if you had a U-shaped truss, you could add fixtures in a U, a grid, or a ring. So we're going to hit the grid here, and I'm going to type in 401 through 421, enter. So I've selected my fixtures. I have highlight turned on, so they just come on. And then I'm going to click and drag down to add them into my plot. So now that they're added in, we can change some options here. So we can change the icon of the fixture. So they could be circles. I'm going to keep them as squares for now, just because that's how they are inside the visualizer here. So we have squares. And then you can change their size. So probably it makes more sense for them to be small than extra large, but it just kind of depends on the rig that you have and what you're trying to do with them. So I'm going to go ahead and just keep them as extra large for now. And then this color option is what outline do you want around the icon, what outline color. So I can make them green, for example, and now we have a outline of green on the fixtures. So if you notice, they're not quite in the grid that's in the back there. So what we're going to do is actually adjust our grid really quickly here. So there's 8 rows, so there's 8 fixtures going down because they're 8 cell bars, and then there's 21 bars going across. So there's 21 columns. You always have to, if you're going to take away anything, so like we would decrease the row number, we want to make sure there's somewhere for them to go on the gang, or on the grid. So the columns, we're going to increase to 21 first, and then the rows, we're going to take to 8. And now they have gone 401 to 421 at the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and turn highlight back on. So when we highlight, though, when we select these fixtures, if you notice, we're actually not selecting in so the plot does not match how the fixtures are actually laid out, which could, if we go into pixel mapping, it could start messing us up. Or I'm just trying to select that first bar. So if I just select that first bar, I'm not actually selecting the fixtures that I want to select. So we need to change how these fixtures are arranged. So 401.1 starts at the bottom left of our group of LEDs. So what we're going to do is we can quickly change the start in the order here. So I'm going to go ahead and select everything again. And we're going to change hit the start to be at the bottom left corner and then the order to be pointed up. So it goes 401.1 starting at the bottom and then 401.8 going at the top. So now that should get me, if I hit 401.1, we go at the bottom, and then as I go up, we get that first bar, and I can start now selecting the fixtures from the bars themselves. And that's really how quick and easy to get like a grid in here if we needed to. So that start in that order makes things go way quicker as well to get them added. So once you have fixtures inside the plot, and you're kind of done plotting the fixtures, you can turn off the gang and the fixture icon, and then we can actually use our plot to actually select the fixtures just as if we were to type in the fixture number itself. So I'm going to go ahead and just change the size here real quick. So if you look in the programmer, as I'm selecting fixtures, we actually get that fixture added into the programmer. Again, just as if we were actually adding the fixtures and selecting them 401, enter, 403, enter, 404, enter. It's this exact same thing. If I turn off highlight, we can notice in the plot, we get intensity feedback, and then we also get color feedback. So as I bring that saturation up, we'll start to see that plot start to change colors as well. And it's not doing anything imaginary. Everything goes into the programmer, just as if we had selected those fixtures, brought them to full, and then dialed up the saturation without having the plot window open. Any questions about adding fixtures into the plot?
So far, Q&A is quiet. What? Well, just as, of course, as I say that, is there a way to get the position of the fixtures in the plots on the encoders? Is there a way to get the position of the fixtures in the plot on the encoders? I don't think so. I'm assuming that means like a fixture can move around the. I'm trying to move around the plot window.
Yeah, I would imagine that's what you mean. He means, or they mean. So you can't do it with the encoder. But what you can't move the fixture with the encoder itself. You can, once you click, if you have the scroll wheel like on the mouse or on a on the trackball, you can scroll up and down with it that way if you needed to. So I'm not actually adjusting like up and down myself. I'm just spinning my wheel. Or you can use the up and down arrow keys that's on all the consoles. You can also, when you hold down open though, the encoder wheels do allow you to pan around the plot. Or zoom into the plot if you needed to as well.
Chris, Megan may go over this a little bit more in detail as we further progress. But if you have an ounce of OCD like I do when it comes to plots and arranging things like this, one thing that you might consider doing is checking out, and I'm sure she'll go into this, is utilizing the snap to grid option for placing and arranging and organizing.
Yeah, I'm going to go over snap to grid once we talk about show objects though, more so.
Sure.
Because that's where I like to use it a lot more than our fixtures. Once you've kind of placed the fixtures though, like maybe the grid's too big or too small, there's two options to change your gang size, and that's either at the bottom right where you have this open bottom right corner, and that's going to allow us to just click and drag it around. And kind of you get to decide how tall or how wide it is. Or this square over here at the bottom left of the gang, and that's going to adjust the size from the center of the object. So those are a couple different ways you can also resize your gang if you need to. I'm gonna make mine pretty tight and close together for this one. Um, so other times you might want to use the other tools. So like I have my 1 through 9 fixtures. 9 tool here, and they are in a straight line. So instead of having them be drawn in a grid, I might just want them to be a straight line right above my RGB LEDs. So we can click and just drag those out, and they can start getting drawn in that straight line here. A use case for the circles is if you have fixtures like the Solapix 7s, 19s, those they have rings of fixtures, so then you can draw you can use the circle icon or the ring to actually get those rings drawn correctly how you need to. Paul has lots of experience with that one.
Which one?
The Solapix.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And then once you have them drawn in, you can also go through and change their rotation if you need to. So like maybe they needed to go 90 degrees. You can go and change their rotation so they actually go 90 degrees. So this changed the gang and the fixture at the same time. And you can just type in exactly what degree they need to go to. If you just adjust the gang without editing the fixtures, then you'll notice that the fixture icon stays perpendicular to the gang at the same time. I'm going to take that back to 0 though, so it makes sense.
If that dotted line were to disappear, it affects our arrangement somehow.
It does not. That's purely to hold the fixtures together.
Right.
That dotted line is the gang, so it's what holds those fixtures in this shape that you have. So we can see that with just the RGB LEDs, this dotted line is actually the grid, and those dots right there are actually the center point of that fixture. So if I was to, I can actually delete the gang if I needed to. So I don't have the fixture icon on, I just have the gang. So I've just selected my gang. If I hit delete, oh, of course, just select the gang. Oh, am I wrong? I thought I could get the fixtures.
No, if you place fixtures on a gang, I think they're tied to that gang. You'd have to place fixtures.
Draw the fixtures off
Yeah.
of the gang.
Now, once you remove them off that gang,
Gotcha.
um,
And if I delete them.
yeah, just keep in mind there was one fixture on there that was left on there.
Okay, so to disassociate the fixtures from the gang, you first have to select the fixtures for them to get off the gang, and then you can go and delete the gang if you wanted to, so that that dotted line was not there. And then they can be treated, I mean, and the fixtures just stay there. It doesn't affect pixel mapping. It doesn't affect the plot in any way. The gang is just there, so you have an easy way to space out your fixtures at that point. Because now if I wanted to adjust the spacing of these fixtures, I don't have a way to do that. I'd have to go and start doing one at a time.
Right. Well, I mean, one thing you could do, I mean, in terms of lining them up, is select them all and then put in a set value. I believe in this case, you could put a set value on the, what do you think,
so if I wanted them to all be on the same Y axis, then I could go into Y and I can type in the placement that I want them to be in.
Right.
But as soon as you adjust the X, they all get on top of each other.
Exactly.
I don't think there's a way to like fan out your X.
Right.
And
Paul asks,
works in the plot.
Paul asks, multi-cell lights like quad, which has 5 parts. What is the best way to lay them out? Paul, usually what I do is I would just simply, in a fixture like the quad that is basically like a 2x2 array, I would just select those individual cells and place them in a grid array. That's what I would do.
That's what I would suggest. And then I usually group the master. I still plot out the masters, but I plot them like way above, and I keep all the masters together.
So yeah, I mean, what I would
And it just depends on
now with the
who you like.
plots, with the plot views, extra added functionality of being able to import like groups and everything, I might bring the group master or the master fixture group into the plot view, and then, like I said, have the individual cells drawn out in a plot. So there's really not a hard fast right or wrong rule. It's just kind of what you prefer.
Hmm. Yeah, I'd say it's what works for you and how you like to do it. To be honest.
Is there a way? Is there any way to hide the gang so that it's still there but not seen? I there is not a way
There,
to hide that gain.
no, there's not. It's just always going to be there. You can't, at least with like these RGB LEDs, if you get it tight enough, you won't see it. Um, so like I made that tight enough there that you won't see it. But if you start spreading out your fixtures, then you'll start seeing those dashed lines. Um, Now with the snap to grid feature, like Paul was talking about, with how things have. So let's just talk about plotting with snap to grid. That might be a little bit easier than starting to talk about it. So once you have snap to grid it on, you get this grid icon in this grid going in the back. Remember, it plots to when you have snap to grid, it goes to the center of the fixture. So if I was to, I'm just going to select one of the solo washes to get that in there. I got to turn on the fixture. Um, so then you start getting it just one at a time. So you can just plot one if you needed to, and to start to tap and drag there. So with snap to grid, it may be easier to just plot without a gang. So then I could also do the next one like this and start getting them spaced out that way. That way specifically. You can still do a range if you wanted to with snap to grid turned on. So I'm going to go ahead and delete those first. 101 through 110, enter lines. Then I can just click and drag here to get them in. And again, it's going to go based on the center of this fixture of this whole thing. So so basically the center of the gang at this point. So you can kind of start seeing how to align these correctly. I'm not doing huge shows, so to me, plotting out 10 fixtures like this one at a time does not kill me. I know that the larger shows, it is not what you necessarily want to do. But just want the one gang. So it makes but with the gang, especially for me, when they're locked in a shape like this, plotting to the snap to grid doesn't work with my mind completely because I can't always get it like centered exactly how I want to. The fixtures aren't spaced out exactly across the grid. Now you can adjust your grid sizes. So whenever I'm using snap to grid, I like to keep things on a 10 basis. So specifically, I like to start at 50 because I know 0 to 100%, so it makes it a little bit easier in my mind. So now I can start adjusting these to be on a 50 count base. So each line is spaced 50 across. So then I can start adjusting the fixtures to actually just take up the proper grid space. So you can once you start working with snap to grid and start working with like the numbers, it can be a lot easier to start plotting out your fixtures, especially if you have like a larger rig.
Jacob asks, so plots are essentially magic sheets. In a way, yes.
Yeah, to a certain extent, yes, they are. Yeah, especially now that you can add in you can add in show objects like plots, groups, palettes, lists, and scenes and stuff like that. You can they've become a lot closer to magic sheets.
Can I import my show plot so I can copy exact positions? Bud wants to know. No, not really, bud. The closest thing that you could probably do, and it's something that I've seen a lot of people do in the past, is like, let's say you're using a visualizer or 3D render or something like that. You could take basically a screen capture or a screen cap of your lighting rig or your visualizer rig, and then upload that as an image in the plot window. And then what you can then do is then start placing fixtures, based on that plot image. LD Steve, can you import from Vectorworks? No, you cannot.
No.
See my previous explanation.
So since Paul just explained how to import like a picture, let's go ahead and walk through that a little bit, because this is actually something that's really important with shapes. So there is a feature something that you can add into a plot, and it's a shape. So if you click on the shape edit lock, you can then go into your the new shape tab on the properties pane and start drawing in like a rectangle. Now this rectangle, you can we have different built-in shapes, so rounded rectangles, circles, triangles, all of the fun things you probably want or don't want. You can change their fill color, all that fun stuff. If you need to, where'd that go? Here. So we can make it yellow. We could add in a border if we wanted to. That kind of thing. You can also add in text to it if we wanted to. So I could say stage right, for example, if I needed to. It's there. It's just, there we go. So I can say stage right if I needed to and keep it and start drawing in these shapes and putting in labels to the plots if we wanted to. Now, another fun thing that can happen with shapes is, like Paul was saying, we can add in, some people like to add in a picture from their visualizer. So I can click and drag. You always start off with a rectangle, but we can click and drag. And right here, there's an image option. So this image option is what allows us to bring that image from a visualizer in. Now, I have one already in here. If you don't, you can hit the import image file and go and find it. So I have another capture one that we can bring in. Oh, no. Well, that's fun. 1 second.
So Bud did a follow-up question. Can I export my plot from Vectorworks as a PNG file and import? And in which case, yes, you can, because effectively you're importing an image file. So that should work. Antonio, in this plot, can I add the buttons associated for the macros or other buttons of the console as in the etc EOS or Magic Sheet? Yes, you can. You can actually export or import rather any directory items, any show directory items into the plot window. So like you can think of this as you can import or bring in group buttons, position palette buttons, color palette buttons. So yes.
Sorry, I keep getting an error that a hog process is an instance of hog is already running. So I'm just trying to find it real quick. There it is. Yeah, that's I'm going through the task manager right now. That way I don't kick y'all all off just by restart. Usually if this happens in real life, I just restart my computer to make sure everything gets killed. And there's the server. I think. Nope, I still have another launcher.
And once you're back, Billy wants us to try something as well.
Okay. cannot cut a break with technical issues.
Were there any remaining services in the processes window running still? Any
Yeah,
web
there was like
services?
DP8Ks, visualizers, all that fun stuff. And I'm going to go ahead and close
Yeah, it looks like
Capture
people
just to be
are, yeah,
safe.
folks are saying the Hog Force service in the task manager was still on.
Yeah, it was. There were a couple in there. I am going to put in a request actually that is we should start everything with Hog4 so it's all grouped together in the task manager.
That would be good.
Right? All right, we're back. So we were talking about importing a fixture, a window into the plot. Exit real quick, and then I know Billy wants us to do something as well.
That's fine. Yeah, I have it marked.
Cool. So once you have this image, once you have your shape dropped in, you can have this image here, select, and then we can click and hit OK, and it adds that image to the plot itself. So these were just images that I took from the visualizer file, honestly, right here. So if you wanted to generate these images, and so when you follow along, you can click on this menu here in Capture, and then there is a Save Image option. And you can export the image of Capture itself that way. So that is how you also can get an image of what you're doing in your visualizer from Capture at this time. Or you can have, so this is just the normal view. And then you could, like Paul said, just drop fixtures right on top. So if I wanted to add in that one bar for the RGB LEDs, I can hit 401 enter. Make sure I select the straight line because it's just a bar going up, and then tap and drag up. This is a case that I probably want to adjust my sizes from extra large to small so that they fit a bit better in here. And then you can just keep dragging and dropping and adding the fixtures. If you're going to do it this way and you're dealing with a bunch of fixtures like this, or yeah, and you're dealing with a bunch of fixtures like this, my best suggestion would be to actually plot out the bars that you have. It doesn't matter how far they're spaced right now. As long as they're going to be the same distance across, so like these are the same size bar. Even if they're all wonky, like I'm putting them in, it's just a very rough sketch, a rough adding of what the fixtures are doing. I can click and drag on them and then only turn on the gang at this point, and I can change their rotation to be 270, and then we can go and just click and drag one bar at a time. But first I'd want the shape to match the size to match. So by clicking on that guy, I can see it's a height of 40, a width of 83.48. So we can just click and drag on all of them and actually adjust your width this way. So I can just say 83.48, and now they're all the same size. Turn on the fixture and adjust it all at once that it's the square and it's small. So now I'm just dealing with them all at the same size, and I don't have to go and adjust each one individually to be the exact same bar length. That's my tip for doing a bunch of like bar fixtures like this all at once. If you don't want to draw them just in a grid and you want them to match exactly how they are. So once you have that edit fixtures on in the properties pane, you can see what your width and your height are and start adjusting them there. Another tip is you can also hold down the slash button, so that button right above the 8. And then if you nudge the parameter, I believe they all go to that, they all snap to that value of the first fixture that you selected. And if you missed that, Jason mentioned it in the chat as well. What did Billy want us to try, Paul?
Going back to one of the other plots that you did that had the grid of the LEDs, I think. Can Can you please use the square selection tool? Select the pixel gang from left to right and top to bottom. Turn on highlight and then go next across multiple fixtures. So it sounds like you're going. Could you do that with the like selection group? So like effectively the first strip or the first.
I went diagonal. But unless he wants that.
Well, I'm wondering if he means like basically effectively the equivalent of selecting the very first the first column,
Mm-hmm.
and then being able to click next and have it select the next column.
Oh, like how to go from column to column.
Right.
Yeah, so that's
I think that's what he's asking.
if you're trying to do that.
Now, okay. The idea is that it should follow the proper way I selected it.
I mean it looks like if I go like this, it does go down and then right to the next one, and it follows that.
Mm-hmm.
And if I go this way, you can kind of start seeing as you're selecting how the console is actually choosing to select your fixtures. So you can start seeing, like if I go from, I'm gonna make these bigger real quick, because then it might be easier to see in the size. So once I do 401.1, you can see which one gets highlighted first, and you can start seeing that selection order. And then whenever I hit next, we'll get 401.8, and then it's going to go into that weird pattern that it was in.
Um,
So you can kind of see, like, the beginning of my fixture selection started at this yellow, and it goes down that way. But if there is a specific issue or it should be acting different, either post it on the forums or shoot me an email, I'd say.
is there a way to get fixtures with multiple cells as one fixture in the plot?
No, there is
No.
not. I would make, if you really want that, I would make that as a group, but then you can't pixel map over the group. I would, yeah, unfortunately, there's not. Yeah, so like we can't just make that one bar a fixture, unfortunately. It's individual cells. I mean, we're showing you each actual fixture itself. And if you think about our compound fixtures, that's just a fixture type that's made of other fixtures. So you don't actually we're not patching a single RGB LED. You're patching, a single 8-cell RGB LED. You end up patching 8 individual RGB cells. So you're actually in the console, still have separate fixtures for each of those cells.
Okay, I think we're caught up.
Great. So let's talk about show objects. So inside a plot, you can actually, I'm going to make a new plot real quick. So inside a plot, you can add in show objects. So if you turn off the gang and the fixture, and you turn on only the show objects, and then you hit the show objects, you have a bunch of options here that you can add in. So you can add in groups, kinds, intensity, palettes. You can even add in plots if you needed to, like the plots from the plot directory, commands, and views if you wanted. So you can essentially make a pretty good punt page from here if you really wanted to. and only include like the things that you need quickly on the fly. So I could put a group in here, and then I can put in my Spot 2000s. And so now there's my Spot 2000 group. I can then go in and add another one for the next fixture type, for the next group, and then one for the next one. And then because I don't want the rest of the fixture, I don't want the rest of the groups for the Spot 2Ks, I can now just go to the Wash 2Ks and do that if I wanted to. And I got the wrong one. But once it's already in here, once you have your show object in here, you can actually change what the target is. So instead of it being Solo Spot 2000, I'd want it to be the Wash 2000 group there. And I Wash. And then I could do these same, and then just grab that last half if I wanted to. So that we can keep going that way. Now, there are some options once you add in the groups in here as well. You can change your user color from just being rings to being backgrounds. You also don't have to do it on one fixture, on all of the groups at the same time. You can just select the one object or the one group that you want, and that can just be a ring. These colors come from how they are in the group directory, how they're colored and labeled inside the group directory. So if I go into the group directory and I change the color here from red to yellow, it's going to change the color in the plot directory, in the plot window if you wanted. And so that's how you can get show objects in. You can also change the sizes if you want exactly the same way we talked about with the grid. Just click and drag, or adjust from the center, or you can rotate if you wanted to as well. Undo. We can also, snap to grid also works with the show objects. Again, this is something that I like to base off of like a certain number, so I go off of 50. And then I like to make my show objects 100. A width of 100 and a height of 100. That way they take up a whole four grids. It's just preference at this point. And then you can just click and drag and add these how you want and put them where you want them inside the plot.
Is there an option to import multiple targets at one time? I.e., I have 40 groups that I want to import.
No, there is not. You can't do multiple at a time. But what a lot of people don't realize is if they are in a numerical order, and you start. So if I just start at open white here with my positions, I click there and it adds in. If I just hit the new button, I click the next one, it's just going to add the next one available to add. So it does speed it up sometimes to be able to just add a whole slew in a row. I know it's not the same as being able to add 40 at a time, but it does speed it up if you just click there and then click and drop them in where you need them to be.
It would be great to be able to import multiple targets at a single time, perhaps as feature request.
I agree. And I've also put in the request myself to have, there's also no keyboard. Usually we get asked if there's like a command line syntax to move objects to a plot, and there's not. So
not currently. I would love to be able to say group 1 move and then just touch the thing. That would be great.
Same, but I know I have physically typed in that request into our requesting.
Yeah, and you can't change the text size of these buttons, right?
That is correct. You cannot. So this is one of the reasons why I really like. I mean, color coding and all that stuff.
As with everything, almost kind of related to plots and pixel mapping, this has kind of been a multi-level implementation. I mean, the very first implementation of plots and pixel mapping was extremely basic, and it has evolved, and this is one evolution. So all of these things like a move syntax or being able to customize text size, these are all great feature requests that we hope to see coming out and being implemented, because they would all make, I agree, they would all make working these plots and working with some of these items a lot easier.
It definitely does. But yeah, like Paul said, this is something that we've iterated on and made better. I think with almost every release we've improved plots in some way. since it's been released. So it's not something that we just left to not get new features or not get improvements. Um, Now with show objects, something else that's useful, especially since you can't change your size and stuff like that. What you can do though is add a shape in behind it, so you can start grouping and start labeling what these objects are. So we have that in there. We could add in a label here if we wanted to. So I can say groups, and you can change the font size inside the shape itself if you needed to. So that you can change it this way if you wanted. Sizes and snap to grid. There we go. So you can change it this way if you wanted to. Now, the label for the shapes always defaults to the center of whatever the shape is. So another thing that might be useful is having another shape purely just for the label.
Like a text box.
Exactly. So I can have fixtures here, increase the size, make it bold, change the color. And then you can either add in another fill behind it, or if you can also just say none and have it be transparent in the back.
How do you send one object underneath another object? So in this case, sounds like is by default are the buttons or the items or the selectable items are typically probably going to always default to on top, and it looks like the rectangle you drew fell underneath by default.
Yeah, so actually, this is the order that you see things. So it goes at the very bottom is going to be your shape, and then it goes into what order you place that in. So then if I drew something on top, it's gonna overlay on top because that was the last thing I drew. So that LTP coming back. And then, so you have your shapes, which always go on the bottom, if you think of this in like layers of priority. And then it goes your show objects, your pixel maps, your gangs, and then your fixtures on top. So it's actually in the opposite order of seeing these from left to right. So if you forget, you can just look at your edit locks here and see the order. So fixtures take the most priority, and then gangs, and then your pixel maps, and then your show objects, and then your shapes. You might see me clicking a lot at the edit locks. And one of the reasons that I do that is because it helps me only grab what I need. So if I have the show objects and the shapes, then I can click, and then if I click there, I'm now adjusting both at the same time, which I probably don't want to do. So a really good habit is only having on the edit lock that you want to deal with. So if I only want to change the location of the show object, make sure that is the only edit lock you have on. I can't accidentally, if I click out, I can't accidentally click on the shape and start adjusting that. And same thing for the fixture and the gang. If you're only trying to edit the fixture placement, then make sure you only have the fixture lock turned on and not the gang lock turned on. Any other questions with show objects and stuff like that?
We're caught up for the moment, but we'll give it a second for.
Great. And then we're going to jump into pixel mapping after that then. While we're waiting, I can just open up this view that I had made real quick with just some show object stuff. So like you could lay out a simple like programming situation or like that if you wanted to. So this is using the same thing. I just threw in like a shape here with a transparent background. And then I have my groups here that I can start selecting. And then combining this with my palettes and my color palettes here, I can start quickly putting things together. I don't have all of the groups broken out, so this is just a really good if I needed to grab all the Spot 2000s and make them do something. Then I can do it that way. But this is just another way to lay out your show file.
Kind of reminds me that Scott Barnes is on the Whole Hog Facebook group, has posted a lot of interesting renders of various ideas for utilizing and creating very elaborate plot full of items and things like that.
He has something that he's done, and I think that's a pretty nifty idea, is he takes screenshots. So like he would do a screenshot um, of let's say this position look here, or there has to be something more. So of like this position look here, he'll take a screenshot of this and put it into the plot. And then right above, and then he'll have this image of the fixtures inside this position right above his position palette, so that he doesn't have to remember, oh yeah, this is what the lead position palette looks like. It gives you a visual representation of what it looks like. And then you can add in a bunch of other stuff. So like you could put in like a logo. I've seen people put in logos for what they're working on, stuff like that inside the plot window. Yeah. But yeah, Scott Barnes is a great resource. I think he did a right after all this COVID stuff started happening. He did a Facebook live event on the Facebook group, and he let us have that video that was recorded. And so it's actually on the YouTube study hall page through that pixel mapping and plotting one that he did as well. Is there anything else before?
Do we have any? Is there any limit of images inserted in the shapes?
So one shape per image, or one image per shape. But I don't know if there is any app. I don't think there is a limit to how many images you can import.
I don't think that there is either.
Yeah, I don't believe there is.
How did you create the bubbles of color on the palette?
They are from auto swatches these are color palettes. So if we open up like the color directory, and if I go into show the options for the color directory, there's the show auto color swatch, and they are right there. They're the same bubbles right there. So they are part of, when you drag in a color palette into a plot, you automatically get that pill.
And keep in mind that those bubble auto swatches are only based on color mix values, not fixed colors.
That's correct. They're only based on HuneSat or CMY. They're also not based on if you were to use the RGB of an RGB fixture. Because those are intensity values, those are not color values.
All right, I think we're caught up.
Cool. Let's talk about pixel mapping now. Yeah, let's have fun. So we have this plot here. So what pixel mapping is going to allow us to do, it's going to allow us to take a image or a video and put that intensity and that color from that image or that video onto fixtures. I'm going to do it starting off with this RGB LEDs, but when I say onto fixtures, I mean onto any fixture. So we can apply this to my CMY fixture, to my Spot 2000s, we can apply this to the Unos. We can even, if you have a rig of par cans, you can even apply it to the rig of par cans, because it's going to take those intensity values and start varying those intensity values. So the first thing you need before you start making a pixel map is inside your fixture window, you need to make sure that there is a pixel map layer scheduled. So we have one already. There's one right here for 400, and that is going to be what provides us our content, so our images and our videos. So we have that 400 in there. Great. So now inside this plot, we need to add in that pixel map layer. So because we're going to be editing pixel maps, we need to turn on that pixel map edit lock. And then we're going to hit show all. Oh, there's already one in here. I'm going to delete it. Then we're going to hit show all so we can see everything. And then you can go and add in a pixel map layer. So you can hit the burst with the pixel map icon behind it. And then you just click and drag around the fixtures that you want the pixel map to be in. So this is, like I said, this is going to be you want it to wrap around the fixtures that you want to be controlled by this pixel map layer. Anything inside this gray box is going to have the intensity and the color information applied to it, or has the ability to at that point. Then you want to make sure you patch that fixture, that pixel map layer fixture. So you hit the checkbox. If you noticed in our fixture window, that fixture was not patched. These pixel map layer fixtures do not have to be patched. They are part of the console. It is a function of the console. So we don't make you have to patch it and take up some channels. We just automatically give it to you. You just need to make sure it's scheduled inside the show file. Once you have it drawn in, then we're done actually setting up the pixel map layer. So you can turn off the edit lock, and now we can actually start programming. So to program with the pixel map layers, you have to select the fixtures. So I'm going to just click and drag on them. Turn off highlight. It's not needed. So click and drag to select the fixtures, and then you click on the plot that they belong to. So this is the RGB LED plot. So you have to go into the plots directory and click on it here, and then press enter. And now you've applied the intensity and the color values. So you can see that you've applied the intensity and color values in your programmer. You can see that there's intensity and color is coming from the RGB LED plot. Now we can select that pixel map layer. So that was 400 at 100%. So to make it to 100% intensity. And once you select that 400, you'll start seeing the content that you can apply. So I can put in this movie, and now the fixture's intensity and color parameters are mapped to this movie. Or we can just do a single shape that doesn't move. And again, it's just mapped to this. Now, if we adjust the intensity of this pixel map layer, then it'll start bringing it down, and you'll see that the fixture's intensity also is being brought down. Because that pixel map layer is piping, you're getting that pixel map layer's intensity piped into the fixture intensity. You can also, so if you've ever used a media server, like an Axon or a DL, these controls are very similar to them. So we can color mix on top of layers if we needed to. So actually I do want the bar in there, but if I want to make it red now, I can just hit the color button to get back to that hue and saturation and bring up saturation again. And now it's in red. We can apply a color, we can apply an effect to that color if we wanted to. Again, it's just treated like a fixture at this point. So we could apply a hue effect and start getting this bar that's a bunch of different colors going through it now. And then there's also other parameters besides color. If you go under beam, you'll start to see a bunch of different parameters that you can adjust. So play speed, so you can slow it down, speed it up if it's a movie. You can change the position of where the image is based on your pixel map. So we could increase that Y, and it's going to go up or down on the bars. X, we can move it and swipe and make it go on and off stage if we wanted to. Or if you go to beam again, then we have some rotate options. So if we can change how it's rotating. So what axis it's rotating across. The Z is the most fun in my opinion sometimes, because then you can rotate it like in a circle, in a pinwheel. And then if you notice, there's those functions there, just like if you had a gobo where you could index or rotate. So you can click where it says index and change it to rotate. And then if you give it some speed, it's going to rotate around the LED bars. So it's a pretty quick way to get some intensity and color effects going onto the fixtures themselves. So I'm going to go over those steps on how to apply the pixel map again. Once it's already drawn in, we select the fixtures that we want it to apply to. You hit enter, and then you select the plot from the plot directory. So we click on the RGB LEDs. You hit enter, and then you select the fixture, the pixel map layer fixture at 100% intensity or whatever intensity you want to give it to, and then you click on the image that you want to go in there. And you can start pixel mapping that way.
Antonio has a question regarding resolution of images. I was just looking at here. I was just kind of looking at some of the specs, choosing and optimizing pixel content. This is listed in the manual. Even though most HD content is 1020 or 1080p or 720p, video content can be directly imported into the pixel map content. Most of this resolution is kind of thrown away during the import. For fast conversions during an import, it is best to use a lower resolution video files, such as 352 by 240 or 720 by 480.
Yeah, I know, like, if you were to put in like a super high res file into here, we are going to compress it anyway. So there's not really a need to do a super high res file. It's going to be compressed because we're just doing RGB color, or we're just doing color mixing and intensity effects on it.
Right. And yeah, and I usually tell people when I'm talking to them about pixel mapping, because they see this and it's like, well, this is really, really cool. Can I drive my video wall with it? And the short answer is no. This is meant to drive, RGBW fixtures or RGB fixtures, strip lights, pars, and everything, things like that. This is not meant to replace a media server on a wall. Can you set the steps for mapping on the function keys?
You can if you record them into a macro. So there's
Keystroke macro.
Yeah, a keystroke macro, and then put the macro onto the function keys, command keys. I don't like doing the macro way. What I actually do is I make a palette because these are all just values that are programmed. Like if you look inside your programmer, you technically do have intensity values and color values here. So what I will do is I will get the pixel map layer, I will get the fixtures ready to be pixel mapped and hit enter to solidify it. And then I record this as a color palette. So I hit record, kind mask, and I get my color and my intensity information. That way it's going to work with intensity and color. And then I click in here and I'll rename it as RGB PM for pixel mapping. And now I can just select my fixtures, click there, 400 at 100, and then I have it going. But you could record these steps as a keystroke macro and move that there, but then you could also just move the color palette to your function keys. I like the palette way just because then I'm not accidentally going to step over my keystroke macro. I can just select my fixtures at this point in time. But if you wanted to record a keystroke macro to do this, here's how you do it. I know a lot of people like the macro way. So to record a keystroke macro, you hit record, macro, and then you select where the macro is that you want. So you hit 1, and now it's starting to record. You know it's recording because you have this red flashing button going. My suggestion when recording a keystroke macro for this is you're only going to want to record command line stuff. The reason why I say go command line is because if you were to take this to another console, then your button pushes may be off because it's recording where on the screen to push it there. So we're going to select 401 through 421. So 401 through 421, enter. And then we need to assign it to plot 1. So to do that, to put plot into the command line, you can hold down pig and then hit fixture, and that puts the plot into the command line. And then 1, enter. So now you have it applied. And then you can do your pixel map layer. So 400 at full. 400 at full. And now you're ready to go. So now I can end the macro recording. So to end the macro recording, you hold on pig and macro, and now it's recorded. So the macro recorded it in real time, which is fun, and that includes all of that explanation that I gave of how the macro is recording. So you usually want to adjust the macro times at that point. So you'll hold down open, tap on macro, and that's going to open up your macro steps. So you can start now adjusting your macro time. So apparently I spoke for 25 seconds. So the first two steps here is your recall view and then your clear and command line. Usually you don't need to recall a view at that point, so we could delete that first step. And it asks me if I want to delete the step, and I'm going to say okay. Clear and command line, that's fine to make sure the command line is clear so it can enter all of this. And then to speed up macros, you usually want it to be, you want your wait time to be longer than your duration at that point. So I do this very haphazardly, I'll be honest, and I click and drag on everything, and I take the longest duration time I see here, and then I hit set, and I go 0.12. I increase it by 0.01. That way, it is for sure longer than the longest duration time. And we can see where I messed up here. I believe it was that guy that I messed up on. So we can actually go and delete. You can go and delete that step. So we know that I messed up on because it says enter 400 full, and then we have all those backspaces. So step 18, delete, and we can just go and delete those. Delete. Delete. I know it's fun watching all these steps delete. Great, and then it's done. So now if we run that macro, we should see it go through here. And there it is in the pixel map, and it ended up being selected at the end, so you have your macro going also. For me, it's easier to record a macro than it's easier for me to record a palette than it is for me to record a macro and do all of that step adjustment for the macro. Because then I can also still throw in that, talking about show objects again, I can throw in that color palette here, color palette 2, into my plot. And you can do this for the macro also, but you can throw it into your plot. And then I believe I have a group as well for this. Groups. Here it is, group 50. So I can do a group. Here. So now, because it's all inside my plot, I can select my fixture, select the color palette, select my group, and start it from here. And again, I could have put the you can also still put the macros inside your plots. I just don't like my command line being taken up like that. Any other questions with pixel mapping, Paul?
No, I think we're caught up at this point.
Great. So something else, because these are all programmed values, we don't have to say intensity and color is always taken over by the plotting, by the pixel mapping. We can say just intensity, just colors taken over. So I can actually go in here for my RGB LEDs, 401 through, and give them an intensity value of 100%. So now the intensity is no longer coming from the pixel map layer. So if I decrease that, I can decrease, and it's all listening based on the RGB LEDs. If you notice, it's no longer into that palette that has the pixel map assigned to it. So what that also enables us to do is to run effects over the fixture itself rather than the pixel map layer. Because the pixel map layer to hog is just one fixture. But we have these 168 fixtures to run an effect across. So I could start an intensity effect at this point if I wanted to. and 50 base value, right? And so if I fan that offset, shuffle, then we'll start seeing that pixel map content come in and out randomly a lot more than if we were than just on the one pixel map layer So all I did there was give the fixture, after applying the pixel map layer, I gave the fixtures themselves their own intensity and ran an intensity effect over the fixture. So you don't have to use everything that's a part of the pixel map layer. You can pick and choose like whether you want intensity or whether you want color from it.
Here's a question.
Uh-huh.
Is there a way to do a smooth transition from normal, quote unquote, normal control to pixel map control and back, without having it pop to black as those values, as those color mix values or intensity values are taken over?
I don't know. Um,
I don't think that there. I don't think there's going to be I mean, fade changes maybe, but effectively when if you were basically, I wonder if you had fade changes turned on and then all of a sudden just put in applied a CMY color palette to this.
let me get rid of my effect real quick. That way they stop.
Um,
And then color palette. Well, they faded in. And then if I apply that palette again,
and I think it would be based on fade changes if you're doing this, trying to do this live in the programmer, and you get some movie content playing, some to see what happens.
yeah. So we have now, this guy. Let me select the fixtures.
Mm-hmm.
And if I apply a red color mix, it's going to crossfade. Your intensity is still going because there's no intensity information.
Right.
And then if I go back and apply that pixel mapping layer, pixel mapping palette, we go back.
So I think that would answer that question.
So you have fade changes turned on. Red. And I could just say at full.
Yeah.
And then if we go back using that palette, it comes back.
When we may haven't gotten to this point yet because I don't think we've recorded any cues. When you record a cue with pixel mapping, how do you release the plot to a static color for the next cue?
Exactly like we just did, where you program that color over it.
Yep, you would just program that color on it and utilize the crossfade.
Yeah, it's just programming at the end of the day. So we can record this cue here, and then I can go and give it that red color mix like I wanted. Again, you just have to make sure that you get that intensity also, though, because sometimes you don't get that intensity. And then I can record that on my second cue here. Choose that fader. Now if we go, it's going to come on. We have our wonderful blue water. We go again. We'll get to that red crossfade. So it's the exact same way. It's just like if you're programming from a color. I like to think of the plot of pixel mapping like a palette, because it's just programmed information at the end of the day. It's just piping in an image instead of actual you color mixing those color effects. So it's just programming at the end of the day. Pixel mapping. 401 through pixel map. Are we caught up then, Paul?
Yeah, Michael asked, can you upload your own media picker effect? To me, that means content, which the answer is yes, you can. You may have to show how to add your own content if you have a piece, but you cannot create your own content within the software.
Yeah, so you can't make your own on the console, but like Paul said, you can upload your own. I can. The only image I have is that plot image, but it'll work. Um, so to add in your own piece of content, you go to shows, so setup and then shows, and that's going to open your show manager, and then you go to pixel map content. On the right hand side are the folders or the sections inside the media picker. On the left hand side is where you go find the content that you have either on a flash drive or if it's on you're on PC in that file folder. So you'll go find the content that you want to add in here. So I'm going to do plots. And then you have to make a new folder here. When you make a new folder, you can give it a name, right click on it, rename, custom. And then you also need to right click on it and give it a number. So you can hit renumber 8. It starts at 8 because the last one that's used is 7. So this is your address, so to say. Like I said, we don't take up any actual DMX channels or DMX addresses, but this is how the console goes and finds the proper image and proper folder. So once you go into custom, then you just click and drag the content that you want to use. And then we automatically give you an address here. So now inside your pixel map layer, you'll see that there's custom at the end, and there's that wireframe.
Another question. Could you show how to use? Could you give us an example of how to pixel map in case of like busking a simple intensity effect? We mentioned in the effects webinar that in some instances it might be faster with pixel mapping.
Yeah.
So I mean, to me, this would be utilizing. I mean, maybe not necessarily the strip lights here, but utilizing, having a pixel map with the 9 Solospot 2000s.
Yeah. Let me.
And then taking advantage of some of the black and white content, or even the color content in the media picker.
1 through 9 and a line here. Great. So we have our pictures in a line. Let me draw in a pixel map. Sure, I can live with that. And I forgot to mention this, but your content's raster size, so like how it gets stretched and all of that, is based on this gray box here, which is why we give you default aspect ratios here, if you wanted to. So that's in there. We are done pixel mapping. We are done editing. So I'll select spots. 1 through 9, enter, plot 8, enter. Then we want to do 400 at 100. So there's a couple different ways you can do this. Paul mentioned utilizing this black and white content. There's also black and white content at the bottom. So you could already, by default, there's a wave going. So that was a bit faster than me doing the effect engine at 50% intensity, putting a sine wave on. You can also, there's just different waves in here that if you wanted to, you can do this and get it going. If you wanted to, you could also, like if we wanted this bar to go from left to right, we could take the beam, move the image off the side. There we go. Record this as Q1. And then record it again on the other side as it goes across. And record this as Q2. And now when you go this list, it's going to turn on. It's going to go one side, you turn on, and it's going to go the other side. So it's going to go back and forth like that. And then we could turn that into a chase if we wanted to. chase. So now it's just going to go back and forth. It's a little wonky. I didn't get my intensities correct. But that's another way that you could do a chase across your fixtures if you wanted to. Where this gets powerful with your intensity effects is, let's say now I want this to apply to like my wash 2Ks in the back. So I can turn on my plot. I mean, I can actually just turn on my fixtures, zoom out of it, and just lay on my 101 through 110 right on top of them already. And now all I have to do here is I'm done adjusting. So all I have to do here is actually put those fixtures inside the, assign it to that plot that's already going. So 101 through enter, select the plot, enter, and now those spot 2Ks are now doing it also. I mean, the wash 2Ks in the back are doing it as well. So if I bring that, if I were to do 1 through 9 at 0, so now those are just the wash 2Ks, those aren't the spot 2Ks in there. So that's why sometimes whenever you were saying you were having some people were saying they were having intensity effects. How do we go from like venue A to venue B and add fixtures in? Well, if you just add them in the right order in the plot, then they just map to that content. And based on what fixtures you have actually selected, that is going to be what gets you what's actually applied in that plot. Hopefully that helps answer that question on how to quickly do intensity effects.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, obviously, in some cases, it's very much content dependent. Um, you know, in utilizing the some of the adjustment parameters of the plot content. So changing the scale of, you know, if you're utilizing that white bar, you could adjust the scale of that content as it goes across. You can make it smaller to where it only is affecting one fixture at a time. So yeah, I mean, so to me, what a lot of this pixel mapping does is it just kind of helps you create some enhanced visual effects. Like in so much of the stock, what we call the stock pixel mapping content, being able to program, bless you, being able to program, you know, just being able to select fixtures, some of these color things, some of these color waves, in, out, left to right, you know, center out, you know, stuff like this it just, to me, really speeds up some of your programming of your waves and color waves and things like that.
That should be easier to see now. I mean, you could make this color effect inside with hue and saturation very easily, but it's also, if you already have it made, it's just as simple to say 1 through 9, apply it to the plot, and then start just adjusting your pixel map content. And if it needs to go faster, you can change that also.
Chris, follow-up question: can the speed of the pixel map content be changed with batches? Just add the pixel map fixture to the batch. Kind of. I think what you would probably do is
you'd set the batch to an IPCB crossfader.
Yep. And what you might do is basically program the play speed on that fader. Mm-hmm. You might program a scene or a single QQ list.
So you just select fixture 400 only, your pixel map layer only. Yep. Only adjust that play speed to be, I like it to start at 0. I think that's what I want. It's been so long since I've had to do that. And then record, I'm going to just record it as a scene onto fader 8. And then you go to options here. Standard, change it to IPCB crossfader. And so now it should Go. So now I should be able to see. I have to adjust like yeah, but it is the IPCB crossfader that you want. I just might not have given it the right base value.
No.
Sorry, Paul, for stepping on.
No, no, it's perfect.
Actually, it's not 0 that you want. It's 100. Edit. Because it has to go somewhere. Oh, because it's a static image. That's what's happening. Ha 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 ha. Release that. There's content. So now, yes, it is possible. I just do not remember the steps exactly. Are there any other questions, Paul?
No, not yet. I just looked at the clock. I can't believe it's already almost 1:30. It feels like this feels like it's like sped by.
Right.
As we're kind of coming toward the end of this session, I mean, open questions, anyone?
Yeah. Any other questions for this, guys?
Something to see over again? Give it a second to give it a minute for folks to type.
And I know we didn't necessarily talk about like there's ways that you can layer pixel map content over each other also. So like if you have 2 pixel map layers, you can start messing with like transparency modes and stuff like that. I highly suggest just playing with them and seeing if you can get what you want out of them. Those are in the pixel map layer. And then underneath color, you'll start getting these effect modes and effect mods that you can change. So you can go to effect 1 mod, and then here's your different effect modes. So you can make black transparent on layer, white transparent, color transparent, stuff like that. And you can dial in how much it should be transparent. So it's really, it can be really powerful for this.
No new questions yet.
Okay.
Wait. Every time I say that.
That's okay. We've got time.
I noticed that pixel mapping has more than one layer. Is that necessary?
It depends on what you want. Honestly, you may need more than one layer. We only have one layer patched into the pixel map layer here. We only have 400, but we could add more if we wanted to. We could have 3 or 4, and it also so any fixture or any plot that's using the same pixel map layer is going to be doing the exact same thing. So because in 8 and 1 I have the same pixel map layer, then the RGB LEDs are in 1. We're going to do the same thing that's in 8, for example, if they're being played at the same time. So it's just one fixture that you're applying to. Now, if we wanted the RGB LEDs and the spots to be different, then that's probably when we want to start having more pixel map layers inside our plot, inside our show file. And you can just quickly do that by hitting add fixtures. Once that fixture schedule opens, you'll check the box that says limit to fixtures in use. And then and then you can just put in how many you want. So I wanted 5 in this show file. I can hit 5 and then enter and enter again, and they get added in here. And then we could assign those into the different plots if we needed to. And that way we can have different sections doing different pieces of content at the same time. They don't have to all be the same content.
Yeah, and I think that this also kind of answers Stefan's question. Is it better to process pixel map content changes on one layer or split it up to a second layer? And again, it's not. I don't think it's necessarily about how much you're processing or anything like that. It's about what look you're trying to achieve with the
Mhm.
content.
Yeah, I think it's all about the different looks that you want. That's what I would probably say. I mean, up until a certain show point, I would guess. I mean, if you're doing like thousands and thousands and thousands of RGB LEDs and they can all be the same content, then you probably just want to render all that one piece of content.
Jason put a comment on the chat. Did the mapping feature get derived from the Catalyst or any specific media servers? I noticed a lot of similarities to Catalyst. Just curious. I found an old Catalyst manual that was very helpful when digging into all the settings. In answer, no, it's not. But I mean, if you look at high-end's history, high-end systems, was one of the early pioneers in developing these media servers for entertainment lighting, and Catalyst was working with Catalyst originally to do that. So Hog, high-end systems, rich history with media servers, a lot of that, and obviously high-end evolution into digital lighting. It has helped shape some of the way we control a lot of these features. But it's not, our pixel mapping is not derived from Catalyst. Paul asks, can you run more than one plot at a time? Say I have 4 plots with 4 different lights and want to run them run the same media. Yes, you
Mhm.
can.
Yeah, you can have different plots with with the same layer, or different plots with different content, and run the same content across the different layers.
Yeah, I
It's
think
all.
you just keep in mind that everything is if you're doing this with the same fixtures, that it's kind
Mhm.
of all based on latest text precedents.
Mhm. And your pixel map layer is just a fixture at the end of the day. So even though it's 400 here and 400 in my other plot, because I'm adjusting fixture 400, it's going to be applied to all those fixtures inside that are listening to that fixture layer, to that plot. So if I were to start my solo spots right now and just put them inside this plot, because they're the same content, those solo spots are now doing the exact same thing. They're in two separate they're in two separate plots, but they are listening to the same pixel map layer fixture. So because 400 is doing that color wave, it's going to both the fixtures, even though they're in separate plots.
Samuel, if you have an RGB fixture that does not have an intensity channel, how can I put the intensity channel on a fader? Maybe through a submaster. Samuel, that may be a limitation of the fixture itself or the profile of the fixture. If it doesn't have a master intensity channel, that's probably going to be hard to do
If it doesn't have a
because,
master intensity channel, you could give it a virtual intensity. It should have a virtual intensity.
yeah.
Um, I don't work with a lot of I try my hardest to stay out of RGB mode. I'll be honest. I don't like RGB mode because it doesn't work with all of my fixtures. I usually just stick with CMY and intensity, or hue and saturation and intensity. Um, but it should have a virtual intensity that you should be able to change, because like these RGB fixtures in the back, they're just 3 channel RGB LEDs.
Right.
They are not 4 channel RGBI LEDs. They're just RGB, and they have a virtual intensity built in. Intensity. See, like there's that dedicated intensity there, and this is just a 3 channel RGB fixture. And if it doesn't have a virtual intensity, um, you can add one in Fixture Builder, but it should have a virtual intensity now, especially if you're using the latest software. All right, we'll give it another minute for questions, and then I
Yeah,
think
okay.
we're gonna.
So, Tim, does inhibitive submasters work on pixel map fixtures?
If it's pixel mapped and the intensity is coming from the pixel map layer, you have to inhibit the pixel map. because that is where the intensity is coming from that pixel map. If it is pixel mapped, but the intensity is not coming from the pixel map layer, kind of like what I showed with doing that intensity effect, then you can inhibit the fixtures themselves, like the RGB LEDs. Does that make sense? I
Makes
hope.
sense to me.
I mean, it makes sense to me also. Because the layer is a fixture, just as the RGB LEDs are a fixture. So if the intensity is coming from the layer, and you want to inhibit the pixel, and you want the pixel map layer to lower and you want that whole thing to have the intensity lowered, you have to inhibit then the pixel map layer. You inhibit wherever the intensity is coming from.
Macro question, or keystroke macro question. Can you add rows to the command line macro, the keystroke macro? So if I needed to insert a keystroke into an existing, keystroke macro like the one you created earlier.
You can, when you go to hit you can I thought there was a way. Record, tap. What happened? Record. Am I in? Oh, I have to turn guard back on. My bad. Record, tap. So when you hit record on the macro directory, you want to make sure guard's turned on so you don't accidentally fire the macro like I did. But once you hit record, it's going to ask you to add steps. So then you can start adding steps and pushing buttons. And then you can pig macro, and then you can hold down and open, and then they should just be added right to the end. Now the part that I don't know is, can I move you can't move the steps. So you are not able to move the macro steps once they're at the bottom though. So that's just something to be aware of. But you can renumber, but it does not look like they get the macro changes, like the location. Oh, yeah, it did. You just have to close and reopen. So apparently you can renumber them if you hold down set and you press on the number itself. Hold down set, press on the number, and you give it a new number. So I'll give it like 200 to drop down to the bottom. So that's step 200. If I close and I reopen, it goes down to the bottom that way. Your mileage will vary with keystroke macros.
Well said.
Yeah, your mileage will vary with keystroke macros. I try to stick away from keystroke macros, to be honest, unless I'm just repeating something over and over and over and over again. Yeah. If I want to add steps, then I just remake the keystroke macro too, because you would have to go in, renumber everything. I don't know if it'll let you renumber, like if I wanted to put this as 6, like it doesn't let me take it as 6. So then you have to do this fun little dance, make it 5.5, make this one 7, if it matters to you that much, and then make this one back to 6. And now things have been rearranged. Keystroke macros, your mileage may vary. It is powerful. It is something you can use, and try not to touch the screen as much as possible when using it, when recording them.
Good times. I think that catches everyone up.
Awesome. Thanks everyone for watching and learning a bit more about plots. Also, make sure to fill out the survey at the end. We will, that's how we get, I'm starting to come up with new content, with more videos after the function keys. Like I said, I teased out before we started recording, there's going to be a fixture builder, and who knows what else there'll be after that. We're going to work on that. Thanks again for watching. Paul, do you have anything before we sign off?
No, thanks for playing along with us, guys.
Yeah. And thanks for all the great questions. They're awesome. If you have anything else, please feel free to shoot us an email, support@highend.com, and we'll get to it. Um, and again, if you had to join late because of another video running over, then these will be on YouTube afterwards. Just probably at the beginning of next week or sometime tomorrow. But give us till next week at the latest. Thanks again, guys, and we'll see y'all around.